Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us. Welcome. Welcome. This is the Jeremiah Gunn Show. This is the Jeremiah Gunn Show. The undocumented expert, kind of the Chuck Norris of philosophy, of reasoned discussion. And come, let us reason together. Let's hear you. Let us hear you. This is your time to prove me wrong. That's what this program's dedicated to Charlie Kirk, and that's what he always said. Just prove me wrong. I think that's what he named his tours, the Prove Me Wrong tour. Didn't happen much. Watch some of the videos. Professors didn't come out. They just sent their sheeple students out, and they couldn't do it, despite the hubris, despite everything. So anyway.
The Jeremiah Gunn Show experience.
Train all day. Study all life. Podcast each morning. Hey, welcome aboard. Glad to have you. Thank you for joining us. This is, I want to explain what we're doing here. We are going to, we, my pronouns are we the people. And this is our mission statement. We coalesce the vapors of human experience, gleaning the wise to summarize, and open eyes to vaporize, and cauterize the metastasized, supersized lies most don't even realize from the Lord of the Flies. But we keep our eyes on the prize and never compromise. We cogitate, contemplate, and communicate. Those are the ways and means. That's a little dedication sort of to Mr. Jesse Jackson, Revenue Jesse Jackass Jackson, who passed away recently and invited the three horsemen of the Jackass Party to the horse's ass, the jackasses of that's the symbol for their party, to speak at his funeral. And his son had to get up, Jesse Jackson Jr., and say, sorry about that. Sorry about those three stooges we brought in here, which was Oblabla, Biden, Buydin, and her ass, Kamilala. Anyway, a little quick, this show's dedicated to Charlie Kirk, the great prophet, hero, patron saint of America. God bless him. Anyway, I want to make a quick disclaimer. I want to make some corrections. I'm not like a newspaper that prints it on page Z14 or something. But yeah, I've made a few mistakes. I was talking about. I think this happens with advancing years. I think that RAM and that CPU get a little bit scratchy sometimes, and you get crosstalk. But so I'll give you a couple of examples, because I don't want anybody to play fact checker and say, well, he was wrong about this. Okay, so just to give you a couple of examples, I may have attributed a quotation to someone versus missed them by someone else, two French philosophers or whatever. But I was talking about the Texas legislature and how the Democrats down there would play games of leaving. You have to have a quorum to get anything done. So instead of doing their job, they would go, bunch of pranksters fooling around with your money. They'd fly to somewhere else, and make sure that they can't get anything done. It's like the word filibuster. I love etymology. I love looking up words and finding out where they came from. It really helps you understand them. Anyway, filibuster comes from pirate. So the thieves, the left, they come only to rob and steal, rob, kill, and destroy. That's what the wisdom literature says. So watch out for these thieves. What's a filibuster? I mean, the Democrat Party was just about ready to. I understand it was settled, but they were going to make sure that TSA didn't get paid to do some sort of a demonstration about ICE, which is supposed to be a 80-20 issue on immigration, despite all demographics, all races, and they were playing the Jim Crow card, which is their card. Jim Crow is a Democrat. Always was, always will be. They're playing games with that because they don't want the slaves off the plantation. So I understand they just settled. But anyway, these Democrat legislators in Texas became famous for they would leave and go to Oklahoma, drink a bunch of beer on your dollars, and just like they were going to let TSA go without pay and go on spring break. That's what they think about you. That's what they think about the federal employees. I thought they were in love with the federal government. I thought they were in love with it. Don't touch the Department of Education. All these unelected people, but under the plantation, Uncle Sam's plantation, the Democrat Party. So anyway, these guys would go to Oklahoma, and I think I said Ohio instead of Oklahoma. So I've read a couple books about Ohio. They're utterly fascinating. I'll share with you, and Oklahoma. So I get, they cross, but that doesn't make the point wrong. I think I mentioned Nixon when I should have said Kennedy. That kind of stuff where it doesn't really make any difference to the point, but it was pretty obvious what I was going with the context. And I might have said Maine instead of Maryland or vice versa, which, starts with M, and, you're sometimes you got to hit Control-Alt-Delete up there. I've heard Dennis Prager and others do this. Chick Hearn was the greatest basketball broadcaster in history, and he would do that. He'd run names together towards the end of his career. I guess it's something that happens when the hard drive and the CPU get to be an older vintage. So anyway, I'm the fact checker. That's all I ever do is fact check. So if you're going to fact check me, go ahead. But I just want to let you know up front, total disclosure. I know I say things wrong, but the overall point is, it's kind of like people say about the Bible, especially the New Testament. Oh, it's so contradictory. It just contradicts itself all the time. So, wrong-o. Anyway, this is Dr. No, K-N-O-W, and I'm broadcasting on the Common Sense Network, the ISI system, part of the ISI system, Common Sense Network, and Radio Free America. We're at war. The Civil War is still going. Revolution is being fought all over again. They're trying to destroy the Constitution. We need to get it. We need to get it back. And we need to know our enemy. You don't think we're at war? I've got a few podcasts, part 1, 2, 3, or 4, something dedicated to that. But it should be intuitively obvious to even the most casual observer. We're at war. Same party, Democrats. Same issue. They want to keep the plantation going. They kept it going for 100 years after the Civil War. With all the stuff, all the games they played. And Democrats in the White House. Only one, really. Think about that. Only one. The one that took over. There was only one Democrat. He took over, and because Lincoln had to have him there. Otherwise, the Democrats would have a fit. So he undid everything that Lincoln and Grant did after a Democrat actor shot him. But anyway, here we are with states, the war between the states. The blue states now they happen to be in the north and west and east this time. This war wasn't about geography. It was about values. It was about how you valued the Constitution. So anyway, there's a saying, and that's what we're going to talk about today. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And you'll never know how much I care until you listen to what I know. This isn't about me. This, Bullwinkle cartoon, for those of you born in the mid-1900s, he used to do this Professor Know-It-All. No, it's not Know-It-All. And this stuff isn't like trivia. I was talking to a lady at work. She says, you know so much trivia. Trivia is like, what high school did the Brady Bunch go to? That's trivia. But, Frederick Douglass, who he was, what he meant, the Founding Fathers, the Federalist Papers, Columbus, that's not trivia. That's not trivia. If you know the saying, if you forget the past, you're condemned to repeat it. Somebody, may have been Mark Twain, said, history doesn't repeat itself, but people sure do. So anyway, if you don't wake up talking to you young people. I'm not talking to the old ladies of both sexes that have given up. Because by the time, it's not going to have any impact on me. It might take a long time for America to fall, but they're working on it hard. Our enemies domestic are partnering with our enemies foreign, and they're trying to take us down. But by the time you wake up, it will be too late to save. It'll be too late. What's going on right now, this culture war over values, it's a culture war is a holy war. You'll have to choose a side. Choose you this day whom you will serve, says the wisdom literature. Know your enemy. Know your enemy, said Sun Tzu, or whatever his name was. The Art of War. They gave us the keys to understanding what these battles are and who our enemy is. If you don't understand, who they are and what they're doing to you, and if you don't know who you are and whose you are, it's not going to go well, because politicians divide people into two classes, enemies and tools. You're going to be one or the other. Those in our magnificent revolution who, they didn't want to take a side, a lot of people. Usually it's there's this 80-20 bell curve rule of philosophy, of sociology. Only about 20% get involved and are interested. And that's probably two tens fighting against each other. And the 80% that fall in the middle, they want to be left alone. I heard Kat Timpf one night talking on Gutfeld. She just had a baby. So I'm like, I have a job and I have a baby and I have a life. So I can't be, well, yeah, I had all of those too. And now I got grandchildren. So I don't know how that translates to that you can't understand. Because what happened is somebody had just enlightened her, I think Greg Gutfeld, on gerrymandering and what it means and how some of these blue states only have like 2 Republicans. Really? And she's like, well, I can't. That's a shock to me. I didn't know. So anyway, there's this sort of disgusting analogy about the frog in the pot of boiling water, and as it gets turned up slowly, if you turn it up slowly enough, they don't even know they're dying, and they get killed. So, we don't want that to be you. But I'm telling you, if you don't get involved, it's going to involve you. It's going to take you over. The same thing happened in the Civil War. The people in the Revolution, when it was over in the 1780s, and they had a constitutional Congress, and the people who didn't want that system left, went to Canada, went to England, as they should today. You think you could just sit that one out and the two forces weren't going to have an impact on you? In the Civil War, you think you could just sit that one out and I don't really have a dog in the fight? Don't you think there were people in the South that were being ruled by these Democrat tyrants that were being, they were going to be acted upon, whatever color they were. There was a lot of people who did not want it. In fact, West Virginia, a lot of West Virginians and a lot of people in Tennessee, but in West Virginia in particular, the northwestern part of Virginia, they did not want, they said, we're more with Lincoln than we are with Jefferson Davis, who didn't allow anybody to break out of their new country, their new racist constitution. An enemy country right here on our continent. An enemy belligerent combatant against the Constitution, not against geography, not against color, against the Constitution. They took states that weren't theirs and said, F you to the federal government, to we the people, to us. Those states didn't belong to them. That'll be covered on other shows, but do you think the people live in there? So the people in West Virginia said, hey, we're more with Lincoln. So Lincoln let them become a state. So they had another state because all of the Democrat ones dropped out. They dropped out of the Union and kept Democrats in the North to sow their discord and sedition and so forth. So, they said, hey, Lincoln, you can't do that. They were always accusing him of violating the Constitution. Sound familiar? You can't do that. He said, what do you mean I can't? He was an expert on the Constitution. He studied it. He was self-taught, but knew it better than anybody else. And they said, you can't do that. He said, well, you think that you guys can, you think that they can violate the Constitution by becoming a whole different country with our states? Violate the union? Disunion. It's like a marriage, they can't take what's not theirs. And he says, and I can't make a state according to the Constitution? Sorry. That's the kind of leadership it took. Somebody with a clear head. He followed all of these losers, all Democrats, who didn't care about the Constitution or slavery. So the decision was forced on the people that lived there, the people in the South that did not want to participate in this breakup, that didn't want to be rebels, so forth, that didn't really even want slavery, but not everybody down there owned slaves. So anyway, don't you think that stuff happened to them? Don't you think in World War I and World War II, the Germans and all of Europe had things happen to them that was not of their choosing? Because they didn't participate. They didn't correct it. World War II, that's another show, but it could have been stopped with a memorandum at one point. Think about that. But things happen to people. There's a proverb of I can't remember what country it's from, but the sheep who depend on the shepherd to protect them from the wolf, they get eaten by the shepherd. But first he shears them. He fleeces them. He takes their coat away and sells it for his own profit. So there's a quote, some of the people in SCOTUS, the ones that weren't Democrats or the ones that were Americans first and Democrats second, very few. But he said, those who won, I'm talking to young men in this war. You're in the army now. You're either on the Union or you're a Confederate. Anyway, he said, those who won our independence valued liberty as an end and as a means. They believed liberty to be the secret of happiness and courage to be the secret of liberty. Those who won our independence valued liberty as an end and as a means. They believed liberty to be the secret of happiness and courage to be the secret of liberty. So, happiness, the pursuit of happiness. That's the foundational document, Declaration of Independence. So if you're interested in happiness, you're not going to have it if you don't do your part, if you don't participate. I love quotes. That's what this show's going to be about. But Viktor Frankl was a white guy, a Jew, who was a psychologist, a research psychologist, and he was put into Auschwitz, I think, or Birkenau, or one of them, one of the death camps, because he didn't go along with Germany's Hitler. And I don't call it Hitler's Germany. He didn't just fall out of the sky and all of a sudden he was in charge. He was elected. He was elected just like the ones we elect. He cheated. He shouldn't have been elected. You couldn't be Austrian and be the Chancellor of Germany, but he worked his way around that. He played games just like the Democrats are doing today with the intent of the spirit and intent and letter of the law. Play games with all of it for their own personal gain. So it was Germany's Hitler, not Hitler's Germany. He couldn't have done one thing. I'm never surprised when a sicko, a sick devil like Hitler comes along, or Joe Biden. But I am surprised that millions of people fall at their feet. That's the problem. That's the danger. So I forgot where I was going with that quote, but that is the problem. So We talk about prophets, not people. This is a Jeremiah Gunn show, in case you missed it. This is Jeremiah Gunn show on Common Sense, CSN, the Common Sense Network, part of the ISI system. America, Radio Free America, Radio Free America. Radio just means broadcast. It's not old. I'm broadcasting from behind enemy lines. So I want to talk about prophets, not people, like Charlie Kirk. A prophet is somebody that's going to tell you what's going to go wrong if then else. Oh yeah, Viktor Frankl. Sorry, thank you, brain, for clicking back here. Random search, random access. So Viktor Frankl said, he said there's only two races, decent and indecent. Okay, and another guy that was thrown in prison with him, Bonhoeffer, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, Lutheran pastor who stood up and actually participated in the plot to execute Hitler, and he wound up tortured and hanged at Auschwitz not long before the war ended. But he said if you're going to get on, this has to do with prophets talking about what's going to happen to you if, like in computer language, if then else. It's a given. If then else, something else will happen. Okay, so if then. So he said if you're on a train, if you get on a train that's going the wrong direction. Sound familiar? If you get on a train that's going the wrong direction, it does no good to run up the aisle in the opposite direction. It ain't going to help. It's not going to help. So people in Germany who woke up too late woke up to the worst possible nightmare, and they inflicted it on the whole world, both one and two, both World War I and II, and everything they teach in school will be wrong. So these were prophets, Brandeis, Frankl, Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Anyway, so Jeremiah was a prophet. Jeremiah Gunn, that's the Jeremiah Gunn show. He was a prophet, and his name became synonymous with warning. That's what prophets do. They warn. It's no fun. It's no fun. People will say, oh, I want some joy. I want joy. You're just a doom scroller. Where's the joy? Well, I want joy too. But I'd rather save people by pointing out the obvious. Have I become your enemy because I've told you the truth? That's what Paul wrote to the people in a particular town that he was trying to help. Did I become your enemy because I've told you the truth? It shouldn't work that way. Thomas Sowell is one of our greatest national treasures. He said, if you want to help somebody, you tell them what they need to hear. You tell them the truth about what they need to hear. If you want to help yourself, then you tell them what they want to hear. So Jeremiah was a prophet. The name became synonymous with a warning. If you send a message out or give a message, it's called a Jeremiad. And it wasn't fun for him. A lot of prophets didn't even want to do it. It's scary. It's dangerous. I'm behind enemy lines. So are you if you're in a blue, no matter who, war between the states, where they don't have to listen to the federal government. Wow. So Gunn is an Irish word. It means war. We're in it. We're in it. We got to win it or sin it. Sin is a word that comes from the Shakespearean 1600 King James era, and it's from archery. It means to miss the mark. It means to miss the mark, and people kind of play that down. Yeah, if you're shooting at a hay bale target like Robin Hood movie, and you miss, it's not that big of a deal, even in a tournament. Unless it's for your life, like William Tellerson. If you're shooting at a grizzly bear that's coming at you, and you better not miss. You got to win. Lincoln said, we shall nobly save or meanly lose the last best hope for mankind on earth. You don't think America is? Have you watched the news at all for the last 10 minutes, let alone 10 days? Oh, I mean, the IOC, another thing in the news, the IOC just had a a thing where they just decided that they're not going to let men be in women's sports. And of course, the UN came out against it. It's wrong. It's anti-science. What? But they're going to actually use a cheek swab. They're not going to do anything else, hormones or whatever. They're looking for that Y chromosome that science once told us distinguished a man from a woman. And they said it's not safe. They talked about things like punching sports. And my wife pointed out that's volleyball now too. You know, if you think about it. A man is 100 times, in some sports, he's 12, 15, 20% more powerful than a woman. And science used to call it sexual dimorphism, that one of the genders of the species is bigger, stronger, more muscle, more bone density, weight, mass. Come on, you talk about science? So they said that 100, that's like getting punched twice with the same punch. And so why did the IOC, that's headed by the first woman in its history, I think she's from England, why did they do that? You don't think that was the Trump effect? You don't think that was Trump telling them how the cows are going to eat the grass now in NATO? The game is over? Asking them if they would like to help with the Straits of Hormuz for their oil? We don't get it from there. And no, I won't. You know, those of you old enough to remember Henny Penny. Who will help me bake the bread? Who will help me eat the bread, you know? No, we're not going to help. Oh, okay. Well, then maybe we don't need to help with NATO anymore. I mean, what do you guys want? What do you want to be when you grow up? So you don't think that the IOC doing that, when Trump did an executive order, said there's men and women, period, no pun intended, and never the twain shall meet? So anyway, you know, what we're gonna do today is we're gonna start off with a kind of a news flash, news comment. I just gave you one, and we're gonna go into some quotes. There's a guy named Jesse the Jackass Ventura. He was governor of Minnesota at one time. Minnesota's got a beautiful track record. I mean, think about it. They got, you know, they back in the day it was HHH. He was LBJ's vice president, Hubert Horatio Humphrey, and he was described as a motor-mouthed pile of silly putty. You know, he wasn't a leader. He wasn't a man's man. He was nice. That was the main thing. I think Eugene McCarthy came from there. He was so nice. My mom was from Minnesota, but then before, around Jesse Jackass Ventura, they elected Al Franken, and now it's just been a race to the bottom. Ilhan Omar, the mayor of Mogadishu, Minnesota, is Fry. You want Fry with that? Yeah. George Floyd. I mean, what a nightmare. That place is a disaster. And they say he's nice. They used to talk about, how about Tampon Tim? He said that you might call it socialism. I call it being neighborly. There's a difference between those two. Einstein. Anyway, I hope you don't mind me calling a spade, calling it what it is. I mean, they took their flag on Tampon Tim's watch and they changed it from a pioneer and an Indian, and they changed it to basically save as of the Somali flag. It's one thing, it's suicidal sympathy. It's one thing to bring in pirates, speaking of filibuster, from there, and have them rack up $9 billion and not assimilate, become an enemy. And then, you know, is he nice? Is he a nice guy? He goes online he goes on a podcast, says he could kick all of their asses. I don't know who he's talking about. He's talking about Republicans, the ones that Biden called garbage. So anyway, so Jesse, the Jackass Ventura, he says that Trump faked the assassination so that he has some name for it, cutesy pie name. That guy should have worn a helmet when he fought, but he said it was fake. Now, I don't know why they put a microphone in front of a guy like that. That doesn't make any sense. There's a meme that says, "Stop making stupid people famous." That guy was dead from the neck up. I was glad when they elected a governor. When they elected as governor a pro wrestler. You're talking about fake, but at least he was kind of like Fetterman. They were going in a different direction. They were going with an outsider instead of this usual stuff, and they went back. They came back. The dog returns to its vomit again. They got somebody like Tampon Tammy and people like that. Anyway, he says fake. So, I was thinking about him. The nerve of that guy. What did he always say? What did he always say all the time? He said he was a SEAL, right? He said he was a SEAL. So I lived in San Diego, and that's where south of San Diego, there's the SEAL training base is there. It's Coronado Island. And they also have this group called BUDS, Basic Underwater Demolition. Frogmen, they called them sometimes in the Navy, but that was kind of gave birth to the SEALs. But so there was this expose that a real true journalist, excuse me a second, real true journalist was given an expose on him, on Jesse Ventura. And what he did was he went and interviewed the head of the school, and about the time he would have been in, and other people are surrounding him, and they said, "We never heard of him. We never saw him come through here. We know who came through here, and it weren't him." So the best theory was that struck a chord in me because I always suspected something about him. Because he'd always say in his interviews, when you're a SEAL, you can't quit. SEALs can't quit. You got to be tough. What they do is you do pull-ups until your skin comes off your hands, but you can't quit when you're a SEAL. He never said I was a SEAL. He just let that illusion. I had a boss, a foreman I worked for, and he used to say, "It's not what they know, it's what they think they know. Go with it. Keep that image." That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I was walking through the local supermarket, and this manager, I'd always waved to him. We had kind of hit it off. He's a nice guy, younger guy. He said, "Hey, there's a rumor around here that you were in the NFL. I'm about the size of a lineman." And I said, "Keep it going. Go ahead. That's fine." And so I started thinking about who would I say I played for. I'd have to pick like the Browns or the Cardinals or something where nobody could really recall or check. And I'd have to think of who was our QB, and I'd made up a name. I was just going to have some fun with it and then let him off the hook. But, when he said, "Oh, you can't quit when you're a SEAL," okay. But that doesn't mean he was one. That's sort of like, depends on what the definition of is. So anyway, I want to talk about quotes for a minute. I love quotes. I think aphorisms are, like a penny saved, a penny earned, those are very, very helpful things. They're very, very educational and helpful for us to get through life. They're kind of like a navigation guide. They used to publish a book called Bartlett's Quotations, and it had all the quotations. This was before the internet, but it was a place you could go, like Roget's Thesaurus. And, Ben Franklin got on the map by coming up with this Poor Richard's Almanac. Penny saved is a penny earned. Early to bed, early to rise, makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. Those who live on hope die fasting. That's a word for starving. Mark Twain, another national treasure, genius, like him, like Ben Franklin. He came up with this idea of Pudd'nhead Wilson. I've just recently read a book about his travels and so forth, and he's got the same thing. All of these brilliant aphorisms that just kind of nail it and help you remember. At work, they called me the walking almanac along those lines. And they had, they would say to me, "Man, we got to get you out of here and get you teaching history." Some of the brass would say, "You should be teaching history. I mean, why are you working here?" And maybe they're trying to get rid of me. I doubt it. But they'd say, you really should be teaching. So I was talking to this one guy, and I was telling him about George Bernard Shaw. And philosophically, he and I were completely different ends of the spectrum, but he was pretty smart. He's pretty brilliant guy. He said, for example, any government that promises to rob Peter to pay Paul can always count on the support of Paul. And, so I was telling him about how we were in my office, it was lunchtime or something, and I was writing on the whiteboard. George Bernard Shaw, he played games with the English. He said the English and the American people, they're a people separated by a common language. He was funny. He had that wit like Mark Twain and Franklin, but really Twain. But anyway, I was telling him about how you could spell, George Bernard Shaw said you could spell the word fish, G-H-O-T-I, if using the conventions of the way we speak English. And so I drew it out, G-H-O-T-I. The G-H is the F sound from fish. I mean, from enough. And the I, is the I sound from the O in women. Women. And the sh sound on the end of fish is the T-I, G-H-O-T-I. It's the T-I sound from action. So he kind of said, yeah, that's funny. He was a really high-end, engineer, leader of a department, so on. And he said, and we played basketball together and hung out together and everything. He said, man, you must have some interesting table discussions with your family there. Everything from Chick Hearn to George Bernard Shaw to Socrates. That's crazy. Anyway, I don't know if you thought it was crazy or not, but it's interesting. I think that stuff's interesting. And my brother asked me one time, I don't want to hear quotes. You always cite quotes. I don't want to hear quotes. I want to know what you think. And I thought, why? Why would you want to know what I think? That's not that important, and by the way, that is what I think. I just found somebody who is able to encapsulate it, right? Here's I'm going to do that next, but here's my sister would say, she said to me one time, she became a real mess, really shipwrecked her life. The wisdom literature says every wise woman builds her home, but the foolish pluck it down with their bare hands. I mean, she just, that's old song, Jesus, take the wheel, whatever. She took the wheel and just went off the road. And, some of the family said, it's hard to take all she's done to us, but, she's got a mental illness or something. Well, I know, but anyway, she thought she was so much smarter than all of us, and me in particular, maybe. And she mocked me for using quotes, for loving quotes. She said what she had done was she had taken my elderly parents' credit cards because they felt so sorry for her, and she'd ran up bills on them, didn't pay it back, and forcing the rest of us to pay it back. And so one day she was trying to put me down and shook her finger in my face, the finger wagging, and said, when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And I had to be patient, but I came real close to saying, when all you have is someone else's credit card, everything looks like a sale. So, don't mock people that enjoy quotes and things and think that they have a value. I think it was Marlene Dietrich. She said, I love quotations because it is a joy to find thoughts one might have beautifully expressed with much authority by someone recognizably wiser than oneself. Bingo. I love quotations because it is a joy to find thoughts one might have had beautifully expressed with much authority by someone recognizably wiser than oneself. When Lincoln was debating Douglas, the Democrat who wanted slavery, just like they all do, don't fall for that switch baloney that they came up with in their institutions, that they own from Head Start to PhD, the government education media attainment complex. The word education means to lead out of a cave, not into one. So, thinking about her quote, Solomon the Wise said that a word fitly spoken is like apples of gold and pitchers of silver. So to translate that to modern English, something well said, well formulated, and making a great point like that, a fine quote like that, it's like apples of gold on platters of silver. Isn't that beautiful? Aren't apples great? I had one the other night. I'll try to have one a day. Somebody said if you eat 7 apples, you can keep the doctor away for a week. But anyway, an apple is just beautiful, especially when it's cold, wet, crisp. Man, there's nothing like it. That's why the wisdom literature uses the word apple so much, and other ancient poetry. So, Alexander Graham Bell, pretty smart guy, he said, there cannot be mental atrophy in any person who continues to observe, to remember what he observes, and to seek answers for his unceasing hows and whys about things. We're all concerned about keeping the, what's that called, dementia, Alzheimer's at bay. And that quote right there says it all. But to the extent that it helps you understand life and be able to share that with people, someone was writing about a very famous great man, philosopher, and they said he had a favorite quotation from Virgil that to his family seemed the key to his character. Felix qui potuit rerum conocere causas. Felix qui potuit rerum conocere causas. Fortunate is he who understands the cause of things. It's kind of fun to figure stuff out and not just listen to Sam Harris or Neil Snake and DeGrasse asked Tyson Chicken or Jonathan Leibowitz Stewart or Joe Rogan or anybody. Who said that those guys know what they're talking about? Bill Maher? I mean, he seems to be waking up a little bit, but come on. So we're going to just go through a couple of quotes here and share them and just kind of have some fun with that. There's a little book I'm going to start off with that, if I can find it, where'd it go? Oh yeah, here it is. It's this little book I found one time on the discount shelf at Crown or something, A Father's Book of Wisdom. And it's just a bunch of compilations, and the dedication says that their dad was a salesman or something, and he's in business world, and he wrote all these quotes on napkins and matchbooks and all that stuff. Thomas Jefferson had a thing called the Common Book. When I met him at, what's the name of that? Colonial Williamsburg. I talked to him for a while after his press conference, and he talked to my boys about, and my daughter about, you should have a common book where you write everything down. That's what these kids did with these things. And they wrote down all his aphorisms for life and rules for life. And it's brilliant. There are so many great quote books. When the left touches something, they destroy it. A thief only comes to kill and destroy and steal. And when the left touches anything, they destroy it. So Bartlett's Book of Quotations, that was our famous sort of dictionary, if you will. It's been ruined. They took out Milton and Shakespeare and all these Western civilization formative things, and they put in like stuff from Obama, for example, that he didn't even come up with. Just a speechwriter handed it to him, and he said it. And they call it one of his quotes. So, so here's a few quotes, and then we'll get into that. This one I really like. Do what you can with what you have where you are. This is called Inspiring Quotes, a little compilation. Do what you can with what you have where you are. That was Teddy Roosevelt. Here's another one. One person can make a difference, and everyone should try. That's the same guy who said a rising tide lifts all boats in terms of capitalism and trickle down. And he actually took that line from someone else. I think it was Harding. But that was JFK, John F. Kennedy. the uncle of RFK. And every time I heard RFK, God bless him, RFK Jr., my uncle said this and my uncle said that. And I always thought of Ted Kennedy. I'm sorry I couldn't think of Jack because of the shadow that fool cast. Anyway, one person can make a difference, and everyone should try. This one says, no dream is too big. These are all presidents, if you didn't get that yet. No dream is too big. No challenge is too great. Nothing we want for our future is beyond our reach. That was a guy named Donald J. Trump. And then here's the last one here. So the best way to get something done, if you hold it dear, hold it near and dear to you, that you like to be able to anyway, that guy, your tax dollars are going to a library for him, and maybe it'll have the auto pen in there. It was just released the other day, speaking of news updates, about how many millions he got from Ukraine, from Burisma, for his son and him and his brother James and that whole syndicate. So maybe I'll read that again. Do what you can with what you have, where you are. That's Teddy Roosevelt. And then here's your president. So the best way to get something done, if you hold it near and dear to you, that you like to be able to anyway. So anyway, let's not end on that sour note. I'll just read the first one from this little book, A Father's Book of Wisdom. I bought this for all my kids, and I bought it for my son-in-law. I actually bought it for 2 financial planners that were helping me out with my retirement, and they both had young kids, so I bought them each a copy. Don't let what you cannot do interfere with what you can do. John Wooden, greatest basketball coach in history, says I. I used to say that to my guys, when I coached. I coached high school basketball for a number of years and youth sports for 20 years or so. Don't worry about what you can't do. Do what you can. I had a little motto: think, hustle, do what you can. Don't spend any energy on what you can't do, but you can do a lot. And folks, just go do it. But do it right. This isn't a battle between right and left. That's what they'd like you to think. And they even redefine left and use the Overton window. This is a war between right and wrong. And how are you going to find the middle or be independent on right and wrong? That you can't. Well, we'll just be a little bit wrong. Yeah, when my kids were growing up, I heard a guy give this analogy that he says, hey, here's some brownies. Oh, cool. They don't have any nuts, but they have, I took some dog dew, just a couple of dog dews, just a couple of Pelosi's, and I put them in the brownie mix. So just a little bit. So you don't know what you're going to get when you have that brownie. But it's just a little bit. It's just a little bit. A little leaven. Leaven's a whole lump. Anyway, thank you for listening. Sorry I ran a little bit long here. A little bit off target. But this is kind of new to me. All I want to do is share because I care. I love you. I love the truth. And because of that, I love you. Wherever you are on earth, there's only 2 races, decent and indecent. There are 2 sexes, but they have a choice, each of them, to be decent or indecent. So the truth will make you free. You'll know the truth, and truth will make you free. No truth, no love, no justice, no peace, no nothing. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. And we'll see you next time. Thank you. Thanks again. Be good.